Hey, welcome to Off My Bridge. My name is Guy, and this introductory episode is just very easy, very chilled, relaxed episode. We're going to be looking at what I use during my Star Trek Adventures 2 role-playing games, as well as I want to introduce you to a very special crew. What am I talking about? Now, I have done a lot of videos on my other YouTube channel. That's How to Be a Great GM, which is specifically on role-playing, mainly in the fantasy environment, but also lots of Star Trek stuff there too. I have learned that oftentimes it is easier to give examples when talking about role-playing concepts or narrative concepts or just in general. And so I thought, well, why not? If not on this channel, on what channel? I'm going to have my own crew. So I'm going to introduce you to my crew and their starship that they will be using throughout the series. Each episode where I need to use examples and things, I'll be using the same crew so that you can get familiar with them. And I'll use them as examples of good and bad ideas as well. So we're going to be talking about that. Before we jump into them though, I wanted to talk about all of the resources that I am currently using for my Star Trek Adventures 2 games and share them with you. First and foremost, I love using Galaxy Deck Builder. Galaxy Deck Builder is a series of cards, link down below to where you can get them from Drive-Thru RPG. And what I love about them is the amount of detail that they have on each and every single card. It is just, it's phenomenal. You want to build an adventure? Pull out a couple of cards, lay them down, and the adventure is there waiting for you. You want to build a random system for your starship to arrive in. Your players go, oh, we want to go to the first star on the left and on till morning. Okay, great. Well, Galaxy Deck Builder throws out a whole bunch of cards, and there's your star system for you with some adventure ideas baked in already. Not specifically to Star Trek, but, well, close enough that you will be able to go, oh, there's a mining colony that's been abandoned. Yes, that's a Star Trek episode right there. I have converted all of the Star Trek orders within Star Trek Adventures 2 into a series of cards that my players can use. I find that that helps manage ship orders a little bit better. It makes it a little bit easier as well if the players have got the cards in front of them. Those I have custom made. That I've just pulled out the data from the role-playing rules, made them into cards, and so I use that. I have taken Warhammer mini bases, the 40mm, the 28mm, those black bases, and stuck images of starships onto those to create my starship discs at the scale ratio that Star Trek Adventures 2 uses. It's really useful for my players to be able to visualize their starships. I use poker chips, all of the different colors that you can of poker chips to represent things like momentum, threat, enemies, determination. Again, if you're unfamiliar with these terms, Star Trek Adventures 2 system utilizes momentum and threat. I'll make a video on that if you want me to. And then the music, I use music when I'm playing around the table. Obviously, when I'm doing live shows and things, I can't use music for copyright reasons. But the music, generally speaking, I will default to the soundtrack for Picard Season 3. They were pulling on a lot of Star Trek themes in Picard Season 3. So there's little fanfares and things that you'll recognize if you recognize the music. Season 1 and 2 of Picard didn't really do very much on that. I will draw on Wrath of Khan if I want good old-fashioned tense battle music. Lots of beautiful, beautiful music from James Horner there. Discovery uses a lot of instrumentation, which is not specifically Star Trek, but still feels like Star Trek and has a good movement to it. Star Trek Nemesis, Star Trek Insurrection, both Jerry Goldsmith at his best, utilizing lots of different themes there. Undiscovered Country is very different, still Star Trek, but very different, very ominous. You've got those beautiful Klingon choral pieces that come in from Undiscovered Country. So if I need to set a dark, moody tone, I will use Undiscovered Country. And then Motion Picture was really where they were exploring different ideas. Goldsmith again coming in. Some Klingon themes, but lots of really cool background, funky kind of stuff. I'll usually avoid using music from the actual shows themselves because although they were orchestrated and used, Dennis McCarthy often involved in that kind of stuff, they also were very background generic sort of bits and bobs, not as dramatic as they might be. So those are the various elements that I use when I'm running my games. Now, I want to introduce you to the crew of the USS Kent. I live in Kent County in the UK, so I thought, well, I'll name the ship the USS Kent. She is an Excelsior-class ship. Why an Excelsior? I love the Excelsior. I don't know what it was about the shape and the design of the Excelsior. I thought she took the very best elements of the Constitution and she reminds me of a figure skater, an ice skater sliding through space on these beautiful long nacelles. I really was a fan of the Excelsior. The USS Kent is an Excelsior-class ship, and her crew, I am delighted to introduce you to them well, let's start with the captain. The captain is a Bolian. I would like to introduce you to Captain Kisan Hanot. He is a Bolian, and he has been in Starfleet for a while. He's been in charge of the USS Kent for over a decade, and has never really been up for promotion to any rank higher than captain, simply because the Excelsior, by the time that everything is set, 2368, my favorite time period of the entire Star Trek line, the Excelsiors have been relegated to doing background things, secondary contacts, reinforcing trade agreements, negotiation agreements, traveling to nebula that have already been classified, and just deep exploring them. Not at the frontiers, not making waves, really. Captain Hanot prefers it that way. He enjoys being particular, specific, making sure that what has been done correctly. Captain Hanot is joined by a security chief, Lieutenant Penelope, or Pen, as she prefers to be called, Cole. Penelope Cole is eager to advance. The Excelsior is a fairly well-armed ship, although she is a little bit antiquated. Her refits have focused mainly on engines, computers, and sensors rather than on weapons. We then have at helm a Lieutenant Junior, Virginia Tanam, a half Vulcan. Virginia has not gone through the Colonnar, is still struggling with trying to be more human than Vulcan, but still suffering from the Vulcan approaches of humans can be a bit impetuous at times. So Tanam often rears her head as the logic, as the damp squib, if you will. Keeping Tanam and everybody else on their toes is the science officer, Lieutenant Spoo Khorsani. Now, Khorsani is from Southern Africa originally, very proud of his heritage, and loves science. Absolutely adores it. Khorsani is all about understanding the universe and exploring and, well, making a difference in some shape or form. Now, as a lieutenant, he has risen through the ranks fairly quickly. He's quite young, but is determined to move forward. The USS Kent is a stepping stone and not the final stone, as it were. Chief Engineer Lieutenant Commander Daln Kavlish is an Orion. He did not choose to follow in the steps of most male Orions and was accepted into Starfleet based on the fact that he was super eager to tinker with engines and seemed to have an aptitude for it. Daln is not interested in Orion culture or his background. He really wants to be separated from that, and Starfleet is almost the antithesis of the Orion culture. And he finds great solace there and in working on engines. He's been aboard the Kent for nearly 5 years and loves running with her engines, especially because she's an older ship. Adapting, adjusting, redesigning systems, modern-day systems to fit with the older components is an interesting challenge that Daln feels that the more modern starships wouldn't necessarily have because they've already got all of the latest and greatest. Finally, rounding us off is joined Trill Dr. Hero Jas. And Hero Jas, the Jas symbiont, is not a particularly old symbiont, maybe 2 or 3 hosts. We haven't yet decided, and if Star Trek has taught us one thing, there can be many hosts that we just don't know about. Hero is very eager, very enthusiastic, has risen through the ranks, but in various forms as JAS, which did pose some interesting challenges to Starfleet. The JAS symbiont has a lot of experience, but Hero is barely 30. So that is the crew. We will learn more about them as we go along. If you would like to add more crew to the USS Kent, leave your crewmen down below. Give us their name, give us their species, and just a very brief one-liner as to who they are and why they are serving aboard the USS Kent and what they feel about the USS Kent. Is the Kent a ship they are proud of? Do they agree with Captain Hannott being thorough and rigorously making sure that every I is dotted and T is crossed? Or are they just waiting to move on? Those are the folks that we will be using as our examples moving forward. This has been Off My Bridge. My name is Guy, and I would encourage you to hit that like button if you liked today's episode. And next week, we are going to be looking at Starship Combat within Star Trek Adventures 2. It is a technical episode, and so I encourage you, if you haven't already, to have a look at the rulebook, because the Starship Combat is, I think, a great combat system, but it can be a little bit daunting if you don't keep track of who's doing what. And so I've got some tips on how to do that in next week's episode. Until then, however, all I can say is live long and happy gaming.